The Iranian people are very anti-Islamic, very anti-far leftist ideas. So I think a democracy in Iran will produce the good results. But obviously, anybody who wants to have Islam in the government, that would not even require us to rely on the democratic process, because that would be in our constitution. That would not be allowed. Islam would not be allowed in our constitution. But now I have a question for you. Like, do you believe that, not in the government, but do you think like in the future of Iran, a Muslim should be allowed to invite people to Islam? Like, should that be allowed or not? Like, let's say as an average, as a citizen, should it be illegal for a Muslim to say, like, guys, so many of you have left Islam, come please talk to me, come to the mosque, I want to invite you back to Islam, I want to give you the true Islam? Should that be banned or allowed?
No, that should be allowed. I'm not with banning like anybody's freedom to practice what they will. My worry is that knowing what some of what the Quran says, will that fanatical idea be brought back in? That's where my worry
In
lies. I
where?
mean, here in,
In
yeah,
government? Oh
yes.
yeah, no, there should
So, like
not be
here in the
allowed.
United States, what we're seeing is, in my eyes, unprecedented. I'm 45 years old. I grew up in the 80s and 90s. It's a whole different world right now. And I am absolutely against anything Islamic in the United States. Whether it's like my sister is Muslim, and I don't agree with her being a Muslim because she doesn't understand the religion fully, but I respect her freedom to want to pursue something that she thinks will make her a better person. So, with my ideology of what I believe Islam to be, I don't separate Islam and Muslim. I look at it as all the same. And that might be in
Oh,
part because of some of my ignorance to it. But some of the people that she speaks with, I don't like because I hear their verbiage and I try to explain to her. So, like, let me go back and say this. In prison,
so
you had what was called the Nation of Islam, which were they were racist. If you were anything other than black, you were the white devil. Okay, some might know them as five percenters. And then you had Sunni Muslims. There was a lot of Sunni Muslims, and they were considered the peaceful Muslims. And I knew a lot of Sunni Muslims, but you got two different people that are within the same organization
right.
saying fanatical things, but with honeyed words. Does that make
Yep,
sense?
I understand that, but here's the thing. Like, when you say there's no difference between Islam and Muslim, I don't understand that part, because I think your sister to me sounds so much better than Islam, even though she calls herself a Muslim, right? So that's why they're not the same thing. I think an ISIS member represents Islam so much better than, for example, your sister. Like, ISIS is true Islam. Your sister, even though she calls herself a Muslim, she doesn't, her behavior does not fully represent what Islam stands for. And that's why there's a difference between Islam and Muslim, in my opinion. I consider Islam to be the cancer, and I consider Muslims to be cancer patients. I consider them to be the
Okay.
victims of this disease, of this cancer. So this is why, in the same way that I'm anti-cancer but not against the cancer patient, we're trying to save the cancer patient. Okay, so if you say I'm anti-Islam, therefore I'm also anti-Muslim, to me sounds like I'm against cancer, therefore I'm against cancer patients as well. To me, that doesn't make any sense. To me, that's the relationship between Islam and Muslim. The Muslim is the victim of Islam that needs to be saved.
Now, see, that helps me out because that's what I'm trying to discern. Your definition of the difference between Islam and Muslim, and you just gave that to me. Perfect definition. So I will
Oh,
think on that because I will have more stuff.
great. I mean, Jason, I mean, think about this. Do you love your sister?
Absolutely. She's like me and my
Okay.
sister hand in hand.
Do you love Islam?
I do not.
Okay, that's how we know Islam and Muslim are not the same thing. Islam is not worthy of love. Islam is not worthy of love, but your sister is.
Okay. Thank you, Armin. That it really did help, man.
Thank you, Jason. I appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Do we have time for the gel or do you have to go on?
I know I have time. I have time. Yeah.
As far as Iran and what you're going to allow there, what do you think is going to happen with the communists? Because that's another thing people are talking about, not just banning Islam, but banning communism outright, just like it was under the Shah, because he outlawed it when he was in power. He just fucking outlawed it, didn't allow it. What do you think is going to happen with that? What do you think about that?
Did the Shah outlaw communism or did he outlaw communist terrorists? I actually need to look into that. Like, did
Yeah,
he allow?
he
Did
banned communism outright.
huh?
Yeah,
What? Say that again.
I think he banned communism outright, just altogether.
Hmm. I have to look into that.
Goldie's talked about that. She said that that's what he did. That he just banned it.
I think he banned. You know, let me actually see. Maybe you're right. Let me see. Did Muhammad Reza Shah ban being a communist? So let's actually look into that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but by the way, whatever the answer is, like even before I see what the answer is, let me just answer. Let's assume he did. We have to also keep in mind that the world was a different world back then. The standards were different, and Iran was at the edge of collapse, right? So whatever ideals that we have that think that are the best way to govern a society, when your country is at the edge of the collapse and the matter is survival, then all of this goes out the window, and you focus on whatever you need to do to survive. You know what I mean? These are some of these values that we're talking about. It's an ideal situation that if the whole country is not falling apart, you know what I mean? After once we have stability, we want secularism, we want democracy, we want equal individual rights, we want separations of powers within the government. Okay, but if at any point you notice that okay, everything is might go to shit, like, and people are going to die and the survival of your nation is at risk, and to save it you need to violate any of these principles, then go ahead and violate some of these principles. Okay, because you cannot abide by these values if you don't even exist. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Does make sense. Uh, yeah, I totally get what you're saying, but and I know they were an existential threat, no doubt about it. But even so, so were the so were the jihadists. They were also an existential threat. So you could argue by the same token that Islam could have been justifiably banned as well back then with communism. I'm just saying, like you could make the same argument about that. But yeah,
Yeah. I'm checking something
yeah,
as an individual, because what it's saying what it's saying is that, hold on,
yeah.
it's saying Muhammad Reza Shah strictly banned communism and political parties associated with it. So being a communist in Iran under his rule was illegal, and the state apparatus was heavily focused on rooting out Marxist ideologies. This was enforced through a combination of legal decrees, secret police surveillance like Savak, and imprisonment.
And that's what Goldie said. She talked about how he just banned it, and she said that's what she wants
Oh,
to do.
but this is what I said because I wanted to say, like was it banned to be a communist, or could you not just be politically active? So I asked it, could you be a communist as an individual? So I said technically you could hold communist beliefs in the privacy of your own mind, but practically living as an individual communist was nearly impossible without breaking the law. Okay,
Yeah.
so this was banned. Yeah.
If you actually
Um
acted on it in some form or fashion, like talking to people, trying to convert them, trying to set up parties.
Yeah, so for example, let's compare this to like Islam, right? So let's look at the situation that Iran was at that point. Communism at that point was not just a belief people were holding. Communism at that point in Iran was the Soviet Union's way to basically come and take a major part of Iran. And communism was a way for people to take parts of Iran away from Iran and basically break apart the country, right? So that was the situation that we're in. So this, for example, and now if you want to compare it to Islam and people being Muslim, I do agree that in a very hard, like in a situation that, let's say for example, Iran is a secular country with a Muslim minority secular country, that an Islamic countries, our neighboring Islamic countries are now trying to use Islam to come in, and they're being very successful at completely destroying the country. I think under those conditions, we could basically throw out some of these principles and basically ban the advocacy for certain ideas, because at that point the entire country is collapsing. So under certain conditions, I understand why we might need to be some of these principles and some of these rights should be abandoned for the sake of survival. I understand that, right? But we're not talking about that situation. We're talking about the country where everything is stable, people, we have stability, the border integrity is not being challenged, and now we just want to have the most ideal situation. In that situation, I'm going to be advocating for maximum freedom of speech, right? But again, so these are extreme situations which requires extreme measures. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. The thing is, like you said, it's they were, the people, the communists in Iran weren't just they weren't just people who believed in communism. They were actually taking orders from the Soviet Union,
Moscow.
from Moscow,
Yes,
exactly.
exactly.
And that's what happened. And that's what happened back in the day here in America. Like you talk, there were there were a lot of there were a lot of people, a lot of communists who were taking direct orders from Stalin and the Soviet Union, and Stalin and Khrushchev after him, and during the so-called McCarthy era, and people talk about it like it was just a complete total witch hunt. And there was nothing to it, but that's not true.
Yeah,
There was
the problem with the problem with McCarthyism is that United States. I mean, I mean, in hindsight, we realize that United States was never in danger of collapse because the Soviet Union was much weaker than it seemed like at the time, right? But Iran was actually going to collapse
yeah,
because the relationship between Soviet Union and United States during the McCarthy was United States was the superpower and the Soviet Union wasn't, even though it might seem like it was, but it wasn't, right? But the relationship between the Soviet Union and Iran, in the late 1970s, was that Soviet Union was a much, much, much bigger power compared to Iran at the time that was basically recovering from a complete collapse. So we were justified to fear
yeah,
communism completely destroying our country, but I mean, Americans were justified to fear communist influence around the world, but McCarthyism was maybe too much, right? Because America itself was not at risk. I mean, by the way, that's the power of hindsight. So maybe we shouldn't be judging
yeah,
them too harshly.
yeah. But if you're, I mean, if you got a bunch of people who are in the country who are directly taking orders, from the KGB, and they're trying
Yeah,
to bring you down as best they can, even if they're too weak to actually do it, and we overestimate them. I mean,
right.
if you're trying to do it, is that really any different? Does that mean these people
Yeah.
shouldn't be rooted out? I mean, it's kind of like the difference between
Yeah.
murder and attempted murder.
So just last point I want to make, because I need to let you guys have your conversation without me after this, right? I just want to say, like, yeah, basically back then in Iran, being a communist was basically the same thing as being a agent, Russian agent. It was basically a Soviet agent. It was basically the same thing. That's why it made sense to go after communists the way that they did. But anyways, by the way, guys, I want to mention that a lot of people in the YouTube chat that disagreed with me, saying like, you know, not surprisingly, the people who were aggressively disagreeing with me with not banning Islam, again, ban them from the government, but these people want to ban them. Apparently, some people in the chat were upset with me that I didn't want to ban it, in basically civil society among individuals. And not surprisingly, they're Iranian. Okay. So the people who get the most angry with me when I say we can't just ban Islam everywhere, like in the streets as well, the number one people who attack me are Iranians, which is actually a good representation of how anti Islamic Iranians are, which is actually a good thing. As much as we might disagree, I love it. I love how anti-Islamic you guys are. Okay, we might be disagreeing over the ways to fight Islam, but I do appreciate your anti how I we are. I mean, as an anti-Islamic activist, I do appreciate your motivations at least. Somebody saying not banning Islam is a big mistake. Yeah, I mean, when guys, ask yourself this: when has banning ideas stopped ideas from growing? Hmm.
Good
I
point.
want to destroy Islam. You are helping Islam. You are helping Islam. Banning
Hasn't
ideas
banning
help them
Nazism
grow.
been pretty effective in Germany?
America hasn't banned Nazism though, and how many Nazis are running around? I mean, there's a few, but like they're not the majority group. They're not the majority group, Jews. I know that you feel like they are because you watch a lot of YouTube, but they really, really are not the majority group in America.
Yeah, Nazism exists Nazism very much is alive in Germany. I know this for a fact. Banning Nazism in Germany hasn't ended Nazism in Germany. It's very much living.
We love Danny, but he wants to cancel free speech for like Muslims and freedom of religion, and I have to tell him not to burn my
That's
constitution.
not that much, but I meant that